who gave the police an anonymous tip about the United Healthcare suspect.
I hope that every time you go in for a shift thinking that the ice cream machine is back up, it breaks in your hand.
I hope that they deny you health insurance for the rest of your life. I hope your grandma falls down the stairs for Christmas.
Who asked you to do that? Nobody asked you to do that.
So he's literally Bruce Wayne. Like, he's the Batman. And I'm trying to be his Robin, okay? Yeah, guys, we're definitely losing TikTok. So this is Luigi Mangione. He's a 26-year-old man detained by authorities on suspicion of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Luigi Mangione, Ivy League prodigy, valedictorian, and now alleged assassin, is being debated online as a lightning rod of a spiraling debate on radicalization and systemic discontent. His dramatic capture came not after days of drones, K9 units, and scuba divers combing the area, but from a quiet tip-off from a bootlicker, Boomer, who was a McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
If you think people hated that CEO a lot, the Boomer rat that, called on the adjuster, bro.
Yeah, people aren't taken too kindly to that round these parts. And as this commenter says, snitches get mixed stitches.
Okay, shout out the guy who pointed this out on Twitter, but the guy who allegedly took out that CEO, Luigi Mangione, they found his Twitter and this was his header. And at first you're like, yeah, it doesn't look that weird. We got like a thirst trap of him traveling, nothing weird, pretty normal. There's a picture of his surgery that people are suspecting radicalized him, especially since he's 26, and at that age you're no longer covered by your parents' insurance, you have to find your own. And there's this Pokemon. And when I first saw this, I was just like, oh, Breloom, he likes Pokemon, based. Not only that, he likes Hoenn, double based. But Foxy Grandpa on Twitter pointed out, Breloom's Pokedex number is 286. In the Bible, if you look up Proverbs 286, it's this.
I'm just going to cut in here. Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. Mangione, arrested while eating a casual meal, allegedly had in his possession a firearm suppressor, fraudulent IDs, and a manifesto brimming with anti-corporate fury. Authorities allege that Mangione, a Townsend, Maryland native with 2 degrees in computer and information science from the University of Pennsylvania, fatally shot United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Manhattan. Mangione reportedly acted alone, using untraceable ghost guns, one of which is believed to have been 3D printed. His manifesto didn't hold back. In it, he said, "These parasites had it coming, and it had to be done." It criticized the healthcare industry for its greed and suggested that violence was the only solution. But what drives someone like Mangione, described by peers as brilliant, charming, and ordinary in many ways, from the halls of academia to the headlines as a suspected killer? The media is trying to paint a narrative that Mangione, losing both grandparents in 2013 and 2017 as a result of systemic failures in healthcare, could be why he carried out the attack. However, researcher Tiffany Cianci did some incredible work digging into Mangione's past, and it's looking a lot like Mangione's family wealth came from healthcare insurers. Here's her findings.
So Luigi Mangione went to Ivy League schools. He also did Ivy League seminars at Johns Hopkins and at Stanford University. He is an intelligent man, but he also graduated as a valedictorian from the Gilman School. Now, if you're anywhere around Maryland, then you know when someone asks where you went to school out here, they're not talking about your university, they're talking about your high school. The Gilman School is one of the most elite preparatory schools in our region, racking in at anywhere between $35,000 and $39,000 a year to go to school there. Introducing the Mangione family. Now, the Mangione family actually is the head of a group of organizations that are privately held nursing care facilities, and it's called the Lorien Group. And if you look at the Lorien Health Services About Us page as of today, it says a family-owned and operated organization founded by and conducts itself based on strong family values. But if you look just a couple days ago, it looked like this. That's right, folks. Just a few days ago, it said when Nicholas and Mary Mangione founded Lorien Health Services, they set out to provide Maryland seniors with pride and dignity, yada, yada, yada. It's very interesting how that just changed, isn't it? Now, doing a fair amount of research on these nursing facilities, I've learned that since 1977, they've grown to have at least 9 long-term care and rehab facilities all across the state of Maryland. They also have expanded to add a healthcare services company, and they invested a ton of money in buying Turf Valley Golf Resort, where they have tons of weddings and conferences, and they also host hundreds and hundreds of dinners for healthcare and pharmaceutical representatives. This is an article from the Washington Post discussing Nick and Mary Mangione's acquisition of the Turf Valley Resort. And it was in these responses to interrogatories from one of their lawsuits that I identify the ownership structure of Lorien Healthcare and their affiliates. And they identify it and say that the 10 adult offspring of Nicholas and Mary Mangione each own a 10% stake. Now, taking a really hard look at how the experiences are for the residents at their family nursing facilities, at first glance, it looked like they were really actually on the up and up. But then I dug I found a bunch of shell corporations and I identified several malpractice suits against them. I also went and looked at the government rankings of their nursing facilities from the Medicare assessment team that actually determines whether or not the residents have a strong quality of life. And let me tell you, the numbers were not pretty. Remember, Luigi volunteered here quite a bit. Right now, their most recent health rating is 2 stars, and they have received at least 24 demerits just on the health conditions and the health inspection investigations in their one facility this year alone. The average number among similarly sized nursing homes in the United States is 9.6, and they've received 24 demerits just this year on one facility. According to this, they're squeezing 112.7 patients on average into a facility that the average in the United States holds 81. But this is where the percentages really start to upset me. Right here, you're going to see the percentage of long-stay, low-risk residents who lose control of their bowels or bladder, which has to be marked every time it happens for Medicare to pay for their bills. 83.2%. The national average is between 48-ish%. That means that of their low-risk patients, almost 85% of them do not get taken to the bathroom in time to use the facilities and are forced instead to go on themselves or in their bed or in their diapers or whatever they have them using. But they are not taken to the bathrooms 84% of the time. And I know what you're thinking. Well, how do we know that Luigi cares at all about what's happening at his family business that has grown and grown and grown? Well, if you look into his LinkedIn, or you did before they took it down, it shows that he regularly volunteered at Lorien Healthcare Services. I give you Exhibit A, one of the instances where he did some volunteer work at his family business. Now, if you look at the notes that have come from the releases today of the manifesto or the documents that were with Luigi Mangione at the time of his arrest, the documents apparently said, "These parasites had it coming. I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done." I am not informed enough to analyze whether he allegedly did what he's being accused of doing or why he did it. But what I do know is he was an incredibly intelligent individual, graduating valedictorian and then later cum laude from very prestigious institutions. His social media feed reads like a philosophical challenge board. I do know that we may be dealing with the possibility of an identity rebellion, or we could be dealing with an ideological, ethical awakening. I know that online he frequently posted about utilitarian versus virtue ethics. Now, if you're not familiar with that concept, utilitarianism is the greatest good for the greatest number of people, regardless of what it takes to get there. Whereas virtue ethics say that an act is good only if a virtuous person would do it. He said that unequivocally, he tended to lean towards utilitarianism, saying that actions justify the outcome if the change was positive for the most number of people. That kind of speaks to where we're at.
Great work, Tiffany. So what do we know? We know that he was caught eating at McDonald's with everything the police needed in his backpack. He did have very specific things written in said backpack that suggested that what he did needed to be done if he did do it. We also know that all of his family's substantial wealth came from the very same healthcare company that Brian Thompson was the CEO of. They have significant wealth, including shell companies, dozens of businesses, and a resort on thousands of acres of prime real estate in one of the most exclusive and expensive areas in the United States. And if we look at Mangione's social media, you can see that at a certain point, he begins to talk more and more about society doing more good for more people, and frequently cites authors that advocated for the same. And even though some are calling him a right-leaning centrist, his posts didn't seem right or left, they seemed up versus down. And considering he was a part of the up, makes for a very interesting quandary. So even though his family business seemed like it started as an altruistic endeavor, its public rankings show different. Too many patients in bad health conditions, reeking of profit over patients. And considering all their family wealth relied on these exact same insurers to keep that money flowing, that's a pretty bold statement, if that's what Mangione intended.
In all seriousness, let's talk about this, right? So if he went to high school for $40K a year, he then turned around and went to Penn and studied, biomedical engineering, which he then used his education to 3D print the gun that he supposedly used in the shooting. And now he is on a path of vengeance as a social justice warrior to bring power to people even though he is not of the same socioeconomic status as. All wrapped up under a banner of unified class consciousness that nobody else in this country has ever been able to achieve. This motherfucker is Batman.
Now, in addition to Mangione's LinkedIn, internet sleuths quickly found his Goodreads, and his review of Ted Kaczynski's manifesto offers some insight into his worldview. He says, "Violence never solved anything" is a statement uttered by cowards and predators. He likened humanity to animals who have forgotten the law of the jungle and argued for survival by any means necessary. He said, "Economic protest isn't possible in the current system, so how long until we recognize that violence against those who led us to such destruction is justified as self-defense? These companies don't care about you or your kids or your grandkids. They have zero qualms about burning down the planet for a buck. So why should we have any qualms about burning them down to survive? When all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. You may not like his methods, but as he thinks from his perspective, it's not terrorism. It's war and revolution. Peaceful protest is outright ignored. And some online sleuths further dug into Mangione's presence, and this is what they found.
Updates on Hitman Talk 911. He has a YouTube video scheduled for release. This is cinema, guys. This is cinema. Hitman Talk is what I assume women go through on this book talk that I always see about. This man, Luigi Mangione, is honestly something I'm obsessed with at the moment. The landing page of the video says, if you see this, I'm already under arrest. And there's a countdown for the video to come out. And it says, all is scheduled, be patient, bye for now. I have never been more into a story and into I'm obsessed with this man. I will willingly admit that. This is genius. What do you mean? This is genius. I can't wait to see what the video says.
Well, unfortunately, someone narked on everyone's favorite unaliver of the United Healthcare CEO. And as a bookish content creator, I'm at liberty to review his Goodreads presence. So let's get into it. Here's his profile. Literally came up on the first page of Google. Currently reading The Book Thief and 2 Michael Pollan books. Of course, he's a Michael Pollan man. In his favorite section, The Lorax is at the top. He rated it 5 stars. Amazing. He's also a bullet journaler, and he said that this book will go down in history as one of the most important philosophical books of the early 21st century. Very interesting. A book for societies. I haven't read this book, so if anyone knows what this book is about, drop some lore into the comments. Has a very in-depth review of this book. Talks about how his mother, and as someone with an Italian mother, I can definitely relate to this, that she, teaches him proper etiquette, and he's like, that's not my priority. I will say a red flag in his Goodreads was that the Elon Musk biography was in his favorites, and he also gave 5 stars to another Elon Musk book. Red flag for me. Another red flag, Infinite Jest in the TBR, and Oppenheimer. And then the red flags keep coming because he read Hillbilly Elegy, but he did only rate it 3 stars, so we don't really know his full thoughts. He didn't write a review. But then also Avatar, slay. Born a Crime, slay. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, slay. This man's Goodreads is all over the place. Of course, he's read Freakonomics, and then greenest of green flags, The Little Prince and the Hunger Games trilogy. Mwah. Amazing. This man clearly did not clean up his internet presence before pew-pewing Mr. CEO, so sorry, Luigi.
So people are painting Mangione out to be more of a right-leaning centrist, which leftists are kind of saying might be a good thing, especially because it makes it much harder for legacy media on the right, or any media really, to paint him as a radical leftist.
It doesn't matter that the shooter was a right-leaning centrist. We need class solidarity. It's us versus the capitalists, period.
Online, Mangione's admiration for the Unabomber, anti-capitalist climate activism, and critiques of corporate greed paint a portrait of a man deeply disillusioned with modern systems. Mangione's social media presence was pretty normal. His Instagram featured pictures of vacations with family, fraternity gatherings, and a life that seemed, on the surface, aspirational. He worked at an assisted living facility during high school, excelled academically, and even garnered admiration for his good looks. Yet behind the seemingly polished exterior, he nursed a growing resentment that culminated in what authorities allege was a coldly calculated attack. Adding to the intrigue is the unique weaponry Mangione allegedly used, the so-called ghost guns. Firearms assembled from untraceable parts and lacking serial numbers are often associated with underground manufacturing, and one was likely made using a 3D printer. These untraceable weapons, along with his manifesto and past writings, have positioned Mangione as both a symbol and a warning. Public reaction to Mangione's case has been complicated, even polarizing, with some online thought leaders pointing out clear holes in the investigation.
I'm going to give you a list of increasingly unlikely things that had to happen in order for this whole "we found the guy in a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania" thing to be true. Number 1. The same guy who evaded police for 3 days and left behind intentional false clues for them to find, including a backpack filled with Monopoly money, also walked into a McDonald's with the gun he used and a piece of paper explaining all his motivations for why he did it. Number 2, the McDonald's employee, any minimum wage, underpaid, overworked McDonald's employee, cared enough to call in the tip. That's it. Those are the 2 unlikely things that had to happen. Do you still think they found him?
He had a handwritten manifesto on him at a McDonald's. Do you think we are stupid?
People who are going to look at that man, not because he's attractive, but just in general, and say, he's wrong, and the one who is responsible for the death of thousands is not. And I mean, for me, he don't look like the person who y'all had in the pictures, and allegedly y'all saying that he had the weapon on him. Weapons can be duplicated, so I don't know. I don't know.
So, on top of this, many are noting how Mangione's manifesto resonates with disillusioned youth. Some have pointed out that his attack targeting a corporate titan rather than a random act of violence might signal a shift from school shootings to high-profile assassinations aimed at systems of power. I'm sure for the elite and whoever else, this case raises uncomfortable questions. Is Mangione an outlier, or is his story a symptom of a society increasingly frustrated with unchecked corporate power and systemic failure? If he is the guy, will his trial spark deeper conversations about healthcare capitalism and radicalization of young men? The only thing I know for sure is that the mainstream and legacy media are getting ready to assassinate Mangione's character in every single way it possibly can.
We as a country are about to test the limitations of trial by jury in a way that our Constitution never could have prepared for. And all it took for the American experiment to reach this fateful crossroad was an Italian American with a dream.
I cannot believe you guys are making light of such a serious situation like this. Like, do you guys even know what happens when you make accusations like this about young men with bright futures? He is somebody's son. He is somebody's brother.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And don't forget to click the bell so you can be notified for when I post new videos.
Most importantly, when it comes to healthcare and you need the system, I hope you get the exact coverage that Brian Thompson thinks you deserve.